the Red River Rivalry. Noon kickoff on ABC, 11 o'clock a.m. Central Time, which if you are a fan of one of these teams, you got to be exhausted with this kickoff time. This is, we're talking about one of the premier rivalries in college sports, Texas, Oklahoma, and you keep doing an 11 a.m. noon kickoff depending on your time zone. It's highway robbery.
Hey, here's the greatest benefit of these teams leaving the Big 12, making their way to the SEC, is there will not be any more big noon kickoffs on Fox for these teams. Sure, they'll have noon games. Every team will, and they'll continue to do that. But they won't be in that big noon on Fox slot anymore. It'll be, ESPN.
ABC.
It's what?
This is ABC. This is ESPN, bro.
Good grief. What are we doing?
Right? Okay. This is what I'm saying.
I'll take it all back. This is why we don't make assumptions, kids. This is why you do your homework, or you look at your phone that's in your lap where you're looking at the game's preview in real time. What are we doing?
Your big noon kickoff is Maryland at Ohio State.
Go Terps.
Texas.
What are we doing?
Yeah, it's stupid. It's absolutely stupid. Make this a night game and don't ever change it. I don't care how good or bad each team is. It's a heated rivalry. Put it at 7 o'clock. Texas coming in at 5.5 point favorites with an over under of 60.5. Points shall be scored. Dragons shall be slayed. And just as you mentioned in passing just kind of a second ago, the last Red River rivalry that we get as Big 12 conference members.
Yeah. I'll never be a huge fan of these teams coming Southeastern. I'll never be a huge fan of that, but it is an awesome rivalry to be in the conference. That's among the best. It's right up there with Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama, Auburn, Georgia, Auburn. That's your cup of tea. You name it. It's right up there with it. I do expect points to be scored in this one. 60 is a lot. It's not that much. It's just 30 apiece. This game could totally go into the 30s and 40s. It's done it way too many times when these teams, and granted, there's been a Lincoln Riley effect in some of those games that we've talked about, that we've beaten that horse into a fine pulp. But points could definitely be scored here. At the same time, the defenses have come along. Brent Venables getting things much more headed in the right direction in year two. The defensive line of Texas looking like they're already in the SEC with what they did to Alabama, what they've done to opponents so far. The offense has, taken halves off here and there at times. I don't expect that to be the case for this big game. What's your feel, though? I mean, where you sitting at on how many points you see being scored here and who you got?
Well, that's like the fun stuff. I want to get through the meat grinder first, if that's okay. I mean,
absolutely, yeah.
So last Red River rivalry in this conference, and also if you look at Texas's schedule, really their last major test on paper anyway. Now, Kansas State is never a pushover. I believe they have guys like TCU left as well. But as far as roster for roster, this is going to be it. And you never really know in these rivalry games. I mean, especially if you've played the video game, you just never know in the rivalry games. But we've seen it in real life as well. I mean, we saw it last week. What business on paper did Auburn have in hanging with Georgia? Rivalry game, Auburn playing with house money, right? Not saying that Oklahoma is playing with house money because they have a lot on the table. They are the most quiet top 15 team in the country, and a national brand with a recognizable logo that you'll find, all over the world, and nobody's talking about them.
Yeah. It's funny for, I guess, a 2022 hangover for Oklahoma to really be in effect because of how big they are as a brand, because of how consistent they've been, since basically the day that Stoops got there and had Leach calling his plays, doing that thing. The early success that they had, they didn't stop winning games. They barely, if ever, had a drop off until 2022. And it's weird to think that, the only reason that I could come up with is their schedule not being so great so far. And again, just a hangover effect from 2022 when they were terrible, breaking in a first year head coach with a lot of transfers in, some guys out, obviously Caleb Williams, Spencer Rattler, whatever. Yeah, that's really all I can think of as to why they've kind of been written off and have been so under the radar for an undefeated number 12 team in the country. Yeah. Oklahoma, nonetheless.
Yeah. So with that said, Texas wins this game, got to be staring at the playoff. I mean, unless you just straight up pull classic Texas losing one that they shouldn't, which is still doable. Kansas State can still pull this off. But again, your last big test. But if you win this, man, you got to be staring at the playoff, right? That's got to be if week 8 gets here and the Herb Streets of the world doesn't have Texas in your playoff, then what are we doing here? Because there's nobody left.
Yeah. After this game featuring unbeaten Oklahoma, the next best records that they'll face is 1-loss BYU at home. They also get 1-loss Kansas State at home, and of course that's all as of right now. Those teams could drop a game before then. Texas could lose this game for sure. Yeah. They could lose, along the way. It is what it is. They close out October hosting BYU, who at the moment has 1 loss, and then pick back up the first weekend in November with currently 1-loss Kansas State, who doesn't look as potent as they have been at times. We know they're dangerous, and Lord knows they live to stop a team like Texas. It's what they live for especially with the target that you've talked about and that we've talked about on here. With these teams leaving the conference, how big the target on their back will be, wanting to slam the door shut and let it hit them where the good Lord split them.
Yeah.
They could lose a game, but it's going to get much lighter for Texas after Saturday.
Absolutely. So if you win, it's right there. If you lose, there's a whole nother narrative on you because you've beaten Bama, but now you've lost to Oklahoma, who, again, nobody has been talking about. Now shifting gears to Oklahoma, who are you? Again, super quiet inside the top 15. If you win, you got to be staring at the college football playoff as well, right? We're that far along for them, I would think.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The winner of this game. The winner of this game needs to be really the Big 12 relies on the winner of this game not losing again. Yeah. Is the truth of it. All common knowledge and common sense points to Texas doing it because of their win in Tuscaloosa, if nothing else, and how long we've been waiting for Texas to get back. But, if Oklahoma wins this game, they're right there looking at a playoff bid as well.
Agreed. And I think I want to point out some statistics that might surprise you and hopefully surprise the listeners out there. The first one that I want to lead off with, because I'm like, who is Oklahoma? Who are they? And I was pointed out by a podcaster that I like to listen to, points out 2.5 takeaways per game for the Oklahoma defense.
Yeah, and that's strong.
That's real strong.
It's strong. It's just not as strong for me when it's Arkansas State, SMU, Tulsa, Cincinnati, who gave them a 14-point game when everyone thought it would be much more than that, even though it was at Cincinnati. And then, they murder Iowa State, which everyone's doing this year.
Yeah.
But sure, yes, absolutely still impressive to get your defense's hands on that many, turnovers is very impressive.
Yeah.
It's shocking, really, the turnaround. We're in a vintage second-year turnaround. This is what good coaches do in year 2. And obviously that's just supplementing their offense, which has been fantastic.
Yeah. All right. Some other statistics that I want to throw at you. Large in part, in some places, Texas and Oklahoma are at the top of this inside of the Big 12. Rushing yards per game, Texas 191, Oklahoma 157. For the brand that is Oklahoma, I think that I would like to see that 157 higher. For who they are. Brand. Speaking slowly of the brand and just who they are. Here's the one that caught me off guard. I was not ready for this. Passing yards per game. Texas, 286. Oklahoma, 352. Dylan Gabriel, dude, doing work, a quiet 1,500 yards, 7 yards away from pushing 1,600, 15 touchdowns, 2 picks. It's better than Quinn Ewers, who's sitting at 1,310 scores.
You're correct. It is better.
You're going to bring the opponents up again.
No, I'm not going to do it here.
Okay.
Because
right.
I've already done it a time or two, so I'm not going to do it here. But I am going to say that I do like the balance of Texas better, and the reason being, you've got Jonathan Brooks leading the way on the ground for Texas at 597 yards, 6.9 per carry through 5 games. And now I will remind you here that is having played Alabama at Alabama, whereas for Oklahoma, you've got a guy at 199, Marcus Major. You've got Walker at 193. Not quite the same sexiness when it looks at per carry.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot more through the air for Oklahoma, which is typical Oklahoma. The way it has been. That's nothing new. It is kind of funny that it's a defensive coach running it now, a defensive head coach that's running the program there now, and they're doing those things. But yeah, I do like the balance of Texas more when you're just looking at a couple hundred yards here or there in Gabriel's favor versus the schedule that he's played.
Fair enough. Well, last statistic, and then we'll get in predictions. Their defense sits at number 1 and number 2 in the conference. Texas allowing 290 yards per game. Oklahoma allowing 319 yards per game. So I think you do make a good point with considering the opponent and the balance that you mentioned that is Texas is going to have an impact on that defensive number as well. All right, well, let's get into the fun stuff. Before we do that, though, I want to ask you, what's the X factor? What's the X factor? What's the indicative element, person, play, group, whatever, going into this?
There's 2 that jump just straight off the page for me.
Okay.
And it's both on defense for Oklahoma. Can their defensive line do anything more than Alabama's front was able to do? Meaning, can they speed Quinn Ewers up? Can they make him comfortable? Can they force him into a turnover when he's been very, very clean with the ball so far?
Yeah.
Both quarterbacks have three interceptions combined, the 2 of them through 10 games. Can they do anything that Alabama wasn't able to do defensively in this game? And then I look at the cornerbacks and I look at the safeties. Are they able to do anything when you talk about Xavier Worthy, Adonai Mitchell, Whittington, tight end? That's a filthy threesome of pass catchers for the Longhorns. The Sooners are spreading the ball around as well. Now whereas I highlighted Texas running backs, Oklahoma's doing it through the air. They've got some really, really nice numbers there. But again, can the defensive line do anything that Alabama wasn't able to, or their secondary pick up the slack there?
Yes.
If not.
I agree with you. I'm trying not to laugh, man, if I'm totally honest, because you said threesome and my mind went to what you diggity doing here. So I'm going to move on. No, I agree with you. I think the X factor for me is going to be the Oklahoma defense as well. My mind went back to those elite Clemson defenses under Brent Venables and how aggressive they were. And that's going to play the cause and effect game with Quinn Ewers and what kind of impact that has on him. But I really think it's them. I think you're going to see an uber aggressive Sooner defense. And that being said, can Texas respond with the continued balance? Because I think Texas also offensively is going to match that aggressiveness and take their shots downfield. I mean, you have the dudes, Xavier Worthy, Adonai Mitchell, right? And you've got the running game, as you said. But how is the aggressiveness of Oklahoma going to bite them in the butt? Are there going to be times where they do need to let it come to them a little bit? And I just don't think that's Venables' mindset or DNA. He's a go-getter.
And I also don't think they can play that game. I think they have to be aggressive, that they have to force the issue. I think if they sit back, I think Texas will put up 50 on. I mean, could put up 50 on them. They do not want to let this game come to them, I don't think. They need to be aggressive, find ways to do it.
Yes, see, that's my argument. I think Texas can do it no matter what style they play. And I agree. With that being said, I think you do need to play the aggressiveness because, like, if you're going to do it, like, it needs to be because you pursued them hot.
And it's almost like we talked about Tennessee needing to do with Spencer Rattler. Don't sit back if he's already going to have a big game. In theory, obviously didn't, and you got pressure with 4 and 5, and especially if you blitz any more than that, you beat him up all night long.
Yeah,
why let Quinn Ewers sit there and do that to you if you're not having success with 4? Be aggressive, be exotic. Venables is among the best at that. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's your best route, man. If you're Oklahoma.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, let's get into the predictions here. We've talked it to death. Going to be a long segment here. Texas 5.5 over under 60.5. What you got?
Texas is going to cover. I think Texas is good for a 10 to 14 point win here. I'm going to say that we hit the over because I think it's going to be something like 41 to 28 or 30 for Oklahoma.
Narrow down the number for me. I got to write it down. Got to put it in ink.
41-30 Texas.
41-30.
Yeah, that's just the way I see it playing out. I've got a lot of trust in them. Obviously, Sark, man, is what's not really, I feel like, getting talked about unless you really dig deep. It's just all about Texas in general and Quinn Ewers and the weapons outside.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's coaching. I think he's in the middle of one of his best coaching efforts outside of 2020 Alabama, or he'll never have weapons like that again, probably. But I think he's been fantastic. Can't say enough about their defense and the strides that they've taken there. Just the way they were able to maul Alabama at times. I mean, if they're able to speed Gabriel up or put him on the ground a bunch. I don't like Oklahoma's run game in this. They already don't seem totally dead. Obviously, they're doing things through the air, and you stick with what's working. But I think they need to be able to run and buy some time for Gabriel, have some play action opportunities, yada yada, RPOs. Mm-hmm. And I don't like the way that sets up for them. I think they're still probably like a year, maybe 2 behind what Texas has been able to do and how they've built back kind of really frequently. Obviously, they're in year 3 and Oklahoma's in year 2 of the current era. You know what I mean? It could be as simple as that. Yeah. But I like Texas by 10 to 14 in this game.
All right. 41-30 Texas, he says. I'm going to say Texas wins, but they don't cover. I've got them 35-31. And let me just say that as I give my final score here, the only thing that will surprise me as far as outcome goes is really just an Oklahoma win of any sort. That's really the only thing I think is going to surprise me. I see a Texas win here, which is crazy because the ESPN FBI has got Texas at 45%. They like Oklahoma here.
I forgot to mention that.
But Vegas is obviously leaning Texas. At the end of the day, yes, this is the best roster that from here on out Texas will face on paper. But for dude, stud for stud, star for star, I like for Sarkisian to look at his team and go, okay, listen, I know who you are, but I believe that my dude is better than your dude. So we're going to sling it downfield. We're going to run it down your throat when the down and distance is short, right? I just like Texas's dudes better. So you've got 41-30 Texas. I've got 35-31 Texas. We're both taking the over. Texas gets the win in the last Red River rivalry. Say that 5 times fast in the Big 12.